Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2021 Travel Unity Summit. These are our online sessions starting today, Wednesday, October 27th. They'll be going through October 29th. And next week, we will be in Lake Placid for our in-person sessions. Really appreciate everybody who's joining us as a speaker, as an attendee, as a sponsor, as a partner. Feel free to utilize our main hashtag for the event on social media, TUS 2021. So for those who might not know us, Travel Unity is a 501c3. Our goal is to increase diversity in the world of travel through individual and community empowerment. What does that mean? It means a lot of things, and hopefully you'll see some of the stuff that means over the course of the next few days. We have our Travel Unity Alliance, which is a way to engage with the different entities that we work with and our programming in a deeper way. So folks can become individual or members through their entities through travelunity.org/alliance. And we have lots of programming for underrepresented groups. So you please feel free to donate as well to support the activities and programs we have there. Our theme for this year is DEI in action. One big thing that has transpired since the pandemic, as we all know in the space, is a lot of things have changed and gone away. There's the opportunity and the challenge that's presented by things changing. And from the perspective of Travel Unity, DEI has always been a means of changing, of growth, of growing the pie for everyone. I think sometimes in the industry, there are questions, and there's either a performative, whether it's known or not, and not putting things into actual, how do we do this? Or there's a confusion, and it's a quite reasonable one of where do we start? So the whole point of this summit is really for those who are starting with their DEI journeys, where do you start? How do you learn from those who are maybe a little further along? And those who are a little further along, how do you get even further along? And what are the pieces that now maybe you have the foundation, how do you start building on that? So that really is the core of all of the sessions that we have for this year's summit. I'd like to thank our hosting sponsor, Roost. As mentioned, we'll be up in the Adirondacks next week. In addition to our main summit, folks don't know this because this is on the back end, we are also doing a youth summit concurrently with the main conference part. So we are going to be bringing up college students from around New York State, from the CUNY, City University of New York, and SUNY, State University of New York, and other private colleges as well, to come up and learn about the Adirondacks, learn what it's going to be like when the 2023 World University Games come, and possible opportunities to volunteer. So we really, being an entity, an organization that started in New York, is still based in New York, has a broader spread. Certainly, we still have a big focus on making sure that we are bridging those divides between urban and rural New York, and it's something that we believe in overall. At this point, I would like to thank and invite Danny Guerrero from MMGY Global to talk a little bit about the Vistas Latinas study and some of the work that MMGY Global has been doing around researching under-researched groups. Danny.
Thanks, Ronnie. Hi, everybody. Good morning, and apologies for any background noise here. It's early in LA and the trash trucks are out. Anyway, I want to start by thanking Ronnie, first of all, for the partnership with Travel Unity. On a personal level, I think it was around a year ago now that I was myself a first-time attendee at these sessions and started learning about the great work that Ronnie and the board and all the volunteers and the advisors do at Travel Unity. And it was really kind of a moment where I kind of stepped back and really, looked at this whole theme of advancing travel together as a way to to lean into community, because at the time, I think, the conversations we were having at MMGY mostly revolved around research, which is very important. And we've been doing some great research, which I'll talk about in a minute, but also the notion of having a body of individuals who were really committed to this and had been doing this for a long time. Roni reminds me a lot that, and in a good way, that this work was being done before 2020. And so my personal connection, given the comments Roni said, is actually nothing to do with the research work, but on a personal note, I think the power of travel unity. And this came over an intro, which Roni might not remember, with Danny Mendoza, who's an intern at Travel Unity. And Danny was a young guy in New York, I think from Ecuador, single family household, trying to make his way in this industry. And we, in November 25th of 2020, he and I spoke. About in the September, earlier this month or last month, he posted an update on LinkedIn saying he had started at Baruch College. And so I said, hey man, congratulations, good for you. And he said to me, your tips really helped in the application process. Just listening to you giving your own experience in a similar situation like mine gave me more motivation. And so I say that because I think everybody in this conference, in this call, really has the power to, from a large macro level, the destinations and travel brands we work with, but yes, also the individual level. So anyway, getting off my soapbox here. Visas Latinas is an important body of work that we released last month during Hispanic Heritage Month. Roni and Sophia and the team at Travel Unity were instrumental in shaping the approach for this research study. It goes deeper than any other study has on the Latinx Hispanic consumer and provides really useful details on the barriers, but also the opportunities for any travel brand. On an interview yesterday, one of the top points that I made was that the barriers exist, right? So 4 out of 10 Hispanic travelers surveyed in the study talked about still being discriminated against because of their color of their skin or their accent or their personal appearance. So the 100% of the report sales go back to Travel Unity. We're really happy about this collaboration, Roni, and we really appreciate you having us be a part of your organization in this wonderful event. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Danny. And definitely, as always, appreciate both you and MMGY support. It's funny you brought up Danny Mendoza and Baruch because Danny is actually going to be coming up to the Youth Summit and has invited some friends as well from Baruch. So it just goes to show like this is the work that we're doing, and to be able to support people who I know, Danny, we've talked about struggles maybe at points, but certainly challenges that you had early on in the industry. So to be able to pay it forward sort of a thing, I think is an amazing.
Yeah, and that's, I think one of the things too is we look at identity and diversity on the basis of just maybe ethnicity or what have you, but socioeconomic considerations are a big part of when we talk about inclusion too, right? In the travel industry, whether you're somebody who is from a low-income background trying to make your way into a career in travel, or somebody who's just motivated to travel. They may not have the means. A lot of what the research shows, I think, also is how does the effects of the pandemic have on Latinx travelers. You see that it actually ranked pretty high in terms of the concern for their livelihood, for their jobs, and the effects of COVID. So we can chat all day, Roni, so I'll let you.
Yeah,
I know.
With the conference. we will another time. Thank you, Danny. So I also want to recognize our bronze sponsors, Thailand and Cayuga. You're going to hear a lot from Karen Cole from Cayuga County over the coming sessions, both this week and next. I want to recognize further our other sponsors and partners, and the SYTA and SYTA Youth Foundation provided grants for transportation and other costs to get those college students up to the Adirondacks. So thank you to them for supporting this work. At this point, I wanted to kick things over to Greg DeShields from Tourism Diversity Matters to talk a bit about how he sees DEI right now and just giving a state of the industry from his perspective. Greg.
So thank you so much, Roni, and for everyone who is joining this session today, thank you so much for being a part of this really important conversation. You know, Tourism Diversity Matters is a national organization that is focused on issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the tourism industry. And we follow a collective impact model where we collaborate. And this type of programming and the partners that you have, Roni, is a shining example of how we make a difference in our industry. You know, you're absolutely right. The work that we have all embarked upon in more intensity since 2020 is certainly not new. Even the organization that I represent in Philadelphia dates back to 1991 and the work that they were doing. I think, however, we have a greater focus around the strategy associated with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how, in fact, that can make change in our organization. You know, over the last 5 to 6 months, I've had opportunities to have conversations, quite honestly, in cities that I would have never thought. I mean, who knew I'd be in Oklahoma or Great Island or Grand Island, Nebraska, and next week I'll be in Montana. The reality of it is I think that there's a clear message that diversity, equity, and inclusion is really going to be the future of our industry. How we look at issues of equity, how we integrate it within our businesses to be even more impactful and more successful. But I think what we've never had in the organization is perhaps as many collective voices that really speak to the issue of understanding the foundational aspects of DEI and then integrating that within your business strategy. And I think that's where the rubber begins to hit the road. More and more organizations are looking at the strategy. They're looking at the pillars that drive their business function and the role that DEI plays, whether it's expanding customers, whether it's being much more successful in terms of the work environment that you create for your employees, or just essentially being a good citizen. I also have to do a shout out to MMGY because the more data that we're able to continue to produce around this work, it becomes more evidence-based. It becomes much more comprehensible about how you are able to apply it and integrate it within your business. You know, the last thing I'll say, and I know we want to move on, is that also we are beginning to realize that there has to be a financial investment in this work. It cannot be done by strictly volunteers. It has to be resourced like any other business function in order to make a difference or to make an impact. So in general, I would say, yes, our industry has certainly awakened and has embraced the idea of strategy and efforts to make ultimate cultural change in their organization. Thank you.
Much, Greg. And like Danny, I appreciate the partnership that we have as human beings, you and I, Greg, as well as TDM and Travel Unity. I think one great thing about this space of DEI at its best is the collaborative aspect of things that inherently we need to work together. And I thank you, Greg, for that. And to that point, Tourism Diversity Matters is part of our association DEI working group. So you could see those different associations that we convene once a month. And one big thing that's come out of this working group is we have an association DEI pledge. So I wanted to bring up Catherine from NTA to talk a bit about how we got there and what that is for those who are part of associations who might not be aware of that work.
Great, thank you, Roni. Hello, everyone. It's awesome to see so many people with an interest in this and being with us this morning, especially those who have this is a really early warning, but you know, something that I have shared with Roni, looking at this just from a personal level, is that I just, you know, believe so strongly in and cherish that intrinsic value of travel. You know, just the notion that when we do travel, whether it be just to the next county over or, you know, to a different country, that we're opening our eyes and connecting cultures and seeing that we have more similarities than differences. And, you know, sadly, despite this, you know, there have been inequities within our own industry. And, you know, when you look really at the roots of travel and tourism, especially at the C-level and business owners, you won't find a great deal of diversity. And, you know, I feel that to exemplify this intrinsic value, really with the inner workings of our industry. It's important, and just from, the humble perspective of an association executive, that we all start on a DEI journey. And for me, that was last year, reaching out to some of our NTA members and asking if they would have a conversation with me. And it was not their obligation, but I felt it was important for me just to really have some open, honest, raw conversations. And one of those was with Portia Connerly, who is now, she helped me see some steps that we could and should take. And one of those was starting a DEI advisory group, and she happens to be the chair of that. So, that was, really part of my journey, but then also getting the association on its journey. One of the reasons why people join associations is to grow both professionally and personally. They aspire to be better people, and associations also provide connectivity, and they should mirror the industries that they serve, and we can do better in this travel space. And I think that's now what brings me to the Travel Industry Association DEI pledge, because an important part of my learning and being able to help guide our association was being a part of this association working group that helped create the pledge. And our work is ongoing. Roni, your leadership and the open, honest conversations with my association colleagues have been enlightening, validating, motivating, and inspiring. So it's really cool. I mean, we currently have 12 organizations that have signed on to the pledge. And Roni, I don't know if you want me to kind of keep going, or if you have any questions, thoughts, or comments.
No, I think that is all very helpful. And I just want to say thank you, Catherine, for the sort of the guidance that you and Carol Ann from SYTA played in this. And also we should also recognize Greg Takahara from Tourism Cares. The DEI pledge is really it's not just a, once again, performative sort of a thing. It is really a roadmap. And while it's designed for associations, it can be applied to really anybody who's looking to start this work. So I am happy to answer questions. I know Catherine is a great resource for this too, but this is available on our website. And for those who would like to utilize it and sign it, we welcome you to do so.
Yeah, we've committed to, it's about purposeful action, and obviously around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we've also committed to the guiding principles, and it truly is a roadmap. And everything is framed by aspiration, because as the document says, change begins with ideas. And then there's action, because these ideas, they need a game plan and they need clear timeframes. And then accountability, because we have the responsibility, to ensure that we are really truly taking this purposeful action, and then, remaining committed to the values. And all of this, is and it can sound really daunting. And I think that's why it's just important with this long overdue work. It can't be taken lightly. It can't be done quickly. Portia and Roni, you've heard me say many times that it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And, just as an association executive and to my colleagues in association management and even to volunteer leaders, I really encourage you to take a look at this pledge and the guiding principles, because as Roni said, it truly is a roadmap. It's with step one, creating that advisory group, to then creating the mechanisms to hold the association accountable. And when NTA's advisory group looked at the pledge and the guiding principles, they were relieved, frankly, to see such a thorough roadmap for the work that they had been discussing. It was a relief to them because they knew that the work was going to be hard and messy, and that there would be, bumps along the road, curves, and some dark patches. And with this, there are those directional arrows and even some guiding lights. And I also want to acknowledge NTA's leadership, our NTA board, because when the advisory group took to them the recommendation that the association endorse this and take the pledge, they enthusiastically and unanimously approved this. And having our DEI advisory group take up this hard work. So it's been really such an amazing process, not only for me personally, it gives me really great hope just for the association and then the industry overall.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you to NTA and all the people on your end for pushing this forward. I now want to introduce another member of our another member of our association working group, which is SATW, Society of American Travel Writers, to talk about some of the work that their DEAI committee is doing. Megan.
Hi, so my name's Megan Padilla, and along with Vicki Ashford Thompson, we co-chair SATW, Society of American Travel Writers, DEAI Committee. We include the A for accessibility. And, sorry, got a little sidetracked there. Our association recently signed the Travel Unity DEI pledge. And what we wanted to talk to you today about is we've been in formation for now 2 years, our committee has been, and we've actually worked our way through many of the steps in the DEI pledge. Our main focus in this coming year, well, I shouldn't say our main focus, but in those steps, the one where we will put a lot of attention this coming year is on auditing the organization through the DEI lens. But we wanted to take today to focus on 4 of the major steps. So with me to present to you today are Silka Neal Finnegan, and Silka comes from Washington County Visitors Association out of Beaverton, Oregon. Silka, could you please wave just so people can see where you are? Okay, wonderful, thank you. And Vicki Ashford Thompson from in Birmingham, and Rob Gard from Destination Madison. And so as you can see, Vicki, Robin, Silka are all representing DMOs, and we hope that that brings a lot of value to this group today. So we are just going to jump right in, and we're going to start in we're going to start at the beginning, which was how did we come to form our committee? So Vicki, could you start us off with a brief history of just how our committee got formed and some key moments that really shaped our trajectory?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to be here today to just share what we have done, our little group has done, in the mark that we believe we've made in SATW, and hopefully with other destinations as we all get into forming DEAI committees or having that in our organizations. We actually started our committee after the 2019 SATW convention. Our incoming president at the time asked that Megan and I begin this committee, noticing that diversity needed to be addressed in SATW. And so Megan, me and Megan, Ethan Gelber, Tanya Fitzpatrick, and one other person, we started out with like 5 people, and realizing that we wanted to grow the membership, but we also wanted to grow the membership from within to make sure that SATW had its ducks in a row concerning diversity. And then we would go out and try to make sure that we have diverse members as a part of the organization as well. So, and then COVID happened. And so this was 2019. And so we did not meet after COVID. Of course, we had started out with just phone calls, just the conference calls, no Zoom at the time. And so the first few months of 2020, we just had phone conversations, and then we didn't after COVID. And then May of 2020 when George Floyd was killed. Unfortunately, that kicked everything into high gear, but it did help us to focus on the need for diversity and just people respecting each other's space. So our group started, as I mentioned, at 5, and we just started reaching out to the organization whenever we could to get other people interested in joining up with us. So our five members, I think at last count, and especially since our our convention that we just had, going into the convention, we had upwards of 30 to 35 people, growing from 5 people just in 2019. And we had started some initiatives at the time, and we just realized that we were all there for the same purpose, and that's to get SATW more diverse, and just try to get everybody to look at our organization and see what the travel world looks like. And so that was our main initiative at the time. So we've been working from that point forward to this point.
Thank you, Vicki. I'll add 2 big things that happened that summer. Well, 2 big things happened that summer, but I'm only going to mention one now. One is that we had been operating, and I think this is really important. In fact, I think this might be the most important thing that we share with you all, is that we had been operating in our little group, and we hadn't asked for leadership to A, get involved, and B, make a public statement outwardly saying SATW believes in this, wants to do this, is behind, that we are going to make change. And we went through some inner turmoil. What should we do? What should we do? How do we make this happen? And guess what? All it took was asking. It wasn't difficult at all. As soon as we voiced, and honestly, we did not have any roadmap, but as soon as we voiced and asked for more visible support and and to come and join our meetings, guess what? So much of leadership came. We had past, present, and future presidents of the board, chair, chapter and council chairs come, and our committee grew like that. So that was a huge step for us. And I might say it was the most important, because from that point forward, we knew that every initiative we came up with, everyone was bought in from the beginning. I can't think of one thing we've suggested in the last 2 years that we've been told no on. So anyway, that led to us being able to write our public statements, our mission statements. It led to us creating our public-facing diversity page on our website. So that is not behind a paywall. We share any of our resources that we've developed with anyone who comes to the page. Vicki, can you just kind of wrap up this step, please?
The leadership, or the statement that the leadership made for us, as Megan said, we just needed to ask. We had a little pushback from what we wanted to make sure was happening was that leadership, because people tend to follow if they know that the leaders are involved, and we didn't want it to look like we had just formed a little group and we're just having our meetings. And we were about to have a webinar, and we had invited some people, and they were wondering where our leaders were. And that's when we realized we had not asked them to come. But when we did ask them to join us, they did. So that kind of got things going and solidified us as, I guess, legitimate when the leadership came on board, and made sure that the members knew that this was organization-wide. It wasn't just a little group that had formed, but we were serious, and we got the leadership involved, and to propel us a little further in our efforts.
Thank you. So our next step then is step 4 in the DEI pledge, and it's solidify code of conduct. Or it says code of ethics or membership principles. And I'm starting to think of this now as cultivating a culture of civility. And in our earliest stages, we had an incident. And well, actually, before we had this incident, we'd begun broadcasting to members to say, hey, there's some open communication here. If you've ever had an experience where you felt unseen, excluded, bullied, or had experienced racism, we were asking people to reach out and let us know what their situation and what their story was. And what we were seeing was a pattern that people felt they had no recourse. They really felt unseen when they had been, when they had experienced something like that. Well, we then had a really ugly episode on Facebook. And what we realized was that our code of conduct was not written to cut this short. There was a lot of, oh, you know, so-and-so is like that. And this is why things kind of lingered and didn't get dealt with. We reworked the code of conduct. We sent it to the board, and the board very swiftly gave it attention and approved it. So that was a huge thing. And I have to tell you, we haven't had a single episode like that since then. So that's pretty exciting. So another thing that happened is our committee revisited our ethics, like what is the process for filing a complaint? We have an ethics committee. And so we learned more, well, how do members access that? What do they have to do? We made that more public. And in the case of this particular episode, we actually did file a complaint as a committee, and every member on the committee chose to sign their name to it. So we just decided that we wanted to step up and go to bat. And, you know, it had a good outcome. So, Silka, I wanted to bring you into this conversation at this point. And can you just tell us a little bit about how you came into the committee? And because what I want to show this group here is how a committee like this builds and forms and gains like a snowball within the organization. How does it pick up members and gain people's you know, engagement? So Silka, I think that you have a really important story to come in at this point.
Thanks, Megan. So the Facebook incident, as we'll call it, that Megan mentioned earlier, it was all about language, actually. And I was in there defending, you know, use of certain terms to describe people of color and Black people, and it got really nasty, and it just left me aghast. And immediately, someone from the SATW board reached out to me, apologized that it had gone this far, and then a fellow PR colleague of mine, who's also an SATW member, she reached out to me and she told me about this committee, and she said, "Hey, they have this DEI committee," which I didn't really know that we had. And so I reached out to Vicky asking if I could join, because it made me realize at that point that this was something I needed to get involved with, because I've been in tourism industry for 25 years. And there's always been a lot of talk ever since, you know, the 90s about diversity, but SATW was really doing something about it. And I wanted to be a part of that. And it took a situation that was very disheartening, and it gave me hope and light at the end of the day. And the committee had already been around for about, a year when I joined. So it was fun to see the committee grow, and they already had the steps in the code of conduct and everything when I joined, but that was the impetus for me joining the committee.
Thank you, Silka. Vicky, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that visibility is important. As Silka mentioned, we had been around for about a year, and we were at different points trying to make it known that we existed. And as she mentioned, it took something like this to say, hey, you don't have to suffer in silence. There is recourse. And it was exciting that we had gotten in front of revamping the code of ethics and the code of conduct, and we were going through the proper channels to make sure something like this didn't happen again. But it was important that members recognize that they have a place to go, a safe place that they can come and talk about what's happening, and we do whatever we can to provide a way out of it. And that goes back to leadership saying, if this is a problem, we need to address it, and leadership jump right in and help us out with that. So just the visibility and making sure that people know that we're there and why we're there.
Thank you, Vicki. So I'm going to jump into step 6 of the pledge. And that is connecting DEI committee, the DEI committee to the broader association. In the effort of time, my fellow panelists, let's jump through this part as fast as we can, at least until we get to Rob. So one of the big things we've done at this point, we can all genuinely say that I think we're at the stage now where every activity of SATW has a DEI touch to it. We have endeavored to get our members out into all of the committees. A big thing we did was getting involved in the nominating committee. Tanya Fitzpatrick, who's on this call right now, she actually took that on to encourage diverse SATW members to run for board positions. Silke, can you just jump in on this a little bit?
Sure. So earlier this year, Tanya reached out to me asking if I would be interested in running for the SATW board for Associate at Large, which was one of the representatives for the PR folks who are members. And I thought about it and I said, yes, I want to do that because in the time I've been a part of this committee, I think we've really made great inroads, and I thought that this was something important for us to continue with the new board, that was elected earlier this month, and to also hopefully bring this to other PR people in our spheres, because a lot of us also belong to other organizations, and hopefully we could spread the word of why DEI is necessary for an association.
Thank you, Silke. Another, I would like Rob to talk about another initiative of our committee, and then Rob, go ahead and follow that through with another example.
Sure. This committee has been very active from the beginning. That's one of the reasons that we joined it, Destination Madison, after hearing Ethan and others talk about it at last year's SATW convention. And one of the key workshops that we conducted as a committee earlier this year was an implicit bias training, a 2-part session that went over 2 separate days. And what was great about that is we opened it up to members and non-members. So I was able to bring in a number of people from our organization into it. Our organization had been having DEAI conversations since 2018, since hearing Greg DeShields speak about it at PRSA in Philly, and with not a lot of direction. And so this type of training started to give us more direction with how we would approach and think about DEAI and implicit bias. And we pretty quickly saw this come into practice. We're actually in the middle of doing a new marketing campaign, video and photo, and we were over enthusiastic about representation. We were looking at this 30-second video saying, okay, here we can get an older gay couple doing this, and we can have somebody who has to use a wheelchair over in this scene. And it got to be pretty big. And what we learned through this implicit bias training and other things from the SATW's committee is the authentic part. And one of our team members who attended the training held up her hand and said, hey, wait a second, this is all good intention, but we're missing the point of the message and the authenticity if we try to put everybody together in one particular video. Let's spread out the authentic representation of our community through video, through photo, through social media, and make it through theme rather than just push everything out at once. And I think that putting on the brakes and thinking about it holistically and authentically would not have happened if it weren't for that training and for some of the other information that's come through SATW's DEAI committee.
Thank you, Rob. And Vicki, can you just give a quick overview of how DEI has worked out in our most recent convention in Milwaukee. Just give a few examples.
Okay. One of the things that we wanted to do, and Megan mentioned that we had, we were very intentional at placing our members on various committees and within the organization, professional development for certain. And so at this convention alone, we had 6 sessions that were devoted in some way to DEAI, and that was normally unheard of, so we're very proud of that, and we covered so many parts of diversity. And as a committee, we have learned, and we consistently, I know at my organization, remind people that it's so much more than black and white. It's about abilities, it's about lifestyles and age and all those types of things. So we covered a lot of that at our recent convention. So we believe that having our representation throughout the organization was a big help. And as a result of that, we were certainly heard at the convention and had every opportunity. We even went to the point of having a special tab on our name tag. So people would ask us what that little tab was about. And we got a lot of new members that are interested in joining us each week when we have our meetings. So we thought that being intentional and putting ourselves out there to be on these various points, board especially. And I do want to point out, Megan, I'll be really brief, that our representation on the board is great because it really helps to develop PD sessions and things like that. But also we're making our mark as far as helping to develop RFPs for where our conventions are going to be. And that's super important because we want to make sure that everybody's able that can join us at the conventions without having any barriers. So we're very happy that we're involved to be on the board to be a part of that.
Thank you. We have hit our time, but Rob, could you please wrap us up with the value of our weekly meetings? Just make it quick, but that's super important. We can't leave without talking about that.
Sure. The weekly meetings is just a fantastic way to touch base about some of the DEAI issues facing us individually as writers, as DMOs, or nationally, national issues. And they are important touchstones both to vent frustrations and concerns, but also to get different perspectives on how to approach challenges that are facing us, either as writers or destinations. And that consistency and knowing that group is there and is supportive is really what I think drives the work this committee does, because people are listening and are taking action.
Thank you so much. We are so not ready to sign off, but our time is over.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you all the folks from SATW. I do want to say a couple things. One, in our association working groups, SATW is frequently out front when it comes to how they're addressing things, and there are topics that some of the other associations we work with are just starting to think about that SATW has already been working through for a year or so. So we definitely appreciate and recognize that. And having had the pleasure and privilege of speaking at the SATW conference, I know it's done, but for those who are putting on an event themselves, I would look back at their agenda and see it is a very honest and integrated way of how DEI or DEAI was integrated into that event. So for those who are looking for an example, that is SATW provides that. So definitely look to them.
Roni, may I just add one thing to that?
Yeah.
Just that our host city, Milwaukee, did an outstanding job at also offering, not only in their tours that they offered us to see their city, opportunities to see different communities, but they also, their keynote speakers and general session speakers that they brought in also gave us diverse perspectives of their community. And so they did a phenomenal job at bringing those offerings to the convention as well.
And to that point, Tony Snell from Milwaukee is part of our 2 p.m. session, so we'll be able to hear from them soon. So Thank you to all of our folks who introduced and kicked off this session. I'm going to stop recording